Fab Five Freddy told me everybody's fly. DJ spinning, I said my. Flash.
The Boys is extremely violent, which is pretty cool. If this show came out in like the 80s on HBO, people would have lost it. The graphic violence probably would have forced the creation of a ratings board like the MPAA. Anyway, this is to say that in the past, violence and stuff was a much bigger deal. Now it's not. You know what is a big deal now, apparently? Being woke. When The Boys Season 3 came out, conservatives realized that they were being made fun of and fucking shit themselves. Season 4's release even blessed us with the Critical Drinker's comedic masterpiece,
The Boys Season 4, I'll destroy your audience.
where he whines about how the 3rd season of The Boys offended him and says that the 4th season must be bad. But, I mean, he didn't watch it, though. It's not violence that offends people now. It's saying that maybe women should be allowed to choose what they do with their own bodies. This show does things that are interesting and weird and daring, all while having an anti-capitalist message that is seemingly a huge middle finger to the company that is giving them their ridiculously inflated budget.
Oh, fuck.
The Boys shouldn't exist. So in the first episode of The Boys ever, Butcher has this speech about how the Supes are big guys that make money. They have a shot of a million different ads that are all for the Seven's different movies and stuff. But the ads aren't intrusive, ridiculous ads like in Blade Runner. No, they're just like real life ads. And I think that's intentional. Vought represents big corporations, especially media corporations like Disney. It's not a very subtle critique of capitalism, but it's a pretty good one. That's right, Capitalism. This sure is a video essay. You know who the biggest capitalism guy is, though? It's the guy that owns this show, Jeff Bezos. This show is criticizing capitalism while being made by, like, the biggest company. It's not really the biggest company, but, you know. I don't think this really took away from their criticism, though. They still live under capitalism, they still need money to make their show. I mean, there's not really much of an alternative. The show kind of tackles this. I mean, the characters never just go live somewhere where there are no Supes, because a place like that doesn't exist. Anyway, The Boys is really special because The Boys comics come from a genuine hatred of superheroes. I mean, they're really edgy in a kind of childish way. It's like, what if Superman was evil and ate babies, instead of just, what if Superman was evil? Its biggest problem, though, is that it never really commits to a central idea other than, I hate superheroes. So it does weird things like let Huey and Butcher use superpowers to kill Supes. So, I mean, I guess there's no more question there. So the creators of the show saw this edge-tastic edge fest and made something a lot more interesting out of it. The same situation where Huey and Butcher take Temp V is now a big moral question about hypocrisy. One of the dumbest things I hear regularly about this show is that at first it poked fun at both sides. And I have a theory about this, a game theory. The Boys goes out of its way to explore every character as a real person. Butcher, for instance, is, you know, kind of the main character, and he fucking sucks.
What?
He's a dick to everyone around him, he can't control his emotions in a healthy way, and he's pretty selfish, only looking to get what he wants, which is revenge. To be honest, he's a lot like what it seems like the writer of the comics is like. Just spiteful of Supes because they're Supes. He's the main character, though, and we should be on his side, right? And even if he tries to do what he does the wrong way, he's still doing something good, right?
Having a good growler, are we?
The show actually puts its own views into question, something that political shows don't do very often.
What's that?
The show actually portrays its characters as human beings. That's a part of what makes it special. Superhero media is often based on the idea that the superheroes are just that, superheroes, not normal heroes. Normal heroes are just people that got lucky enough to be able to do something heroic. That's why you never meet your heroes, because they're people. who can be just as good or as bad as anyone else. So the boys took the idea of how Superman is perfect and awesome and how Captain America is perfect and awesome and said, what if they were fallible humans? Now, while this means they can be all sorts of fucked up like Homelander, that also means that, like every human, they have a sympathetic side. The Deep is a great example of this. He sucks, so he made Annie suck. So naturally, we hate him. Interestingly though, instead of keeping him in power and making him someone we keep hating, the show follows him extensively and puts him through hell, to the point where you feel a lot of sympathy for him. The show does this, I think, so that we understand fully why the Deep does what he does. We see that he is embarrassed by his gills, so he takes that on women, to make himself feel larger and greater than he is. You know, it kinda seems like the show is forgiving him, like showing why he'd be so shitty. I don't think that's what it's doing, though. What it's actually doing is showing a systematic problem. The way that he's meant to hide who he is makes him take it out on others, making an infinite loop of shittiness. The show makes an effort to understand conservatism so that it can make a better argument against conservatism. And it does the same thing with capitalism. Now, arguing against capitalism doesn't mean that you're a Stalinist or an overly idealist Marxist. What it means is that you think that the way that late-stage capitalism gives big companies practically unlimited power and how that fucks over anyone that isn't rich, how it keeps poor people poor and rich people rich is, kind of a bad thing. You think that maybe we could move to an economic system that doesn't make life-saving medicine more and more expensive every year. The show takes time to understand the systemic problems of capitalism. We see this with Vought's unending need for growth. Even when it is the biggest company ever, we see that if anything exists, it has a version with Homelander's face on it. The thing is, a huge problem for them is that the approval numbers of the Seven is always lower than they want it to be. So Vought needs to be doing something so that they can have more merchandising opportunities, more shows, more movies, more money. So Homelander goes and creates an artificial threat in the Soup Terrorists. This is obviously meant to parallel the fear-mongering that is often used to justify national defense. But also, it's a lot like how companies create artificial demand for products. Otherwise, the show takes a more personal approach to it. Even though Homelander is pretty terrible, the show goes back to the very root of the problem. That he's a product, and is treated that way. The company made him so that they could make money. This digs into how celebrities, especially child stars, talk about being treated. The drive for money asks you to hurt and dehumanize people so that you can make a couple extra bucks. What's really interesting about how they do this, though, is that it is a genuine argument against capitalism. It never pulls its punches. It fully lays into all the things it has issues with. Why is this interesting? Because Barbie doesn't do it. What I mean by that is that really, really often, media is financed by big companies, and the media will pretend to criticize big companies while really making them out to be not so bad. In Barbie, we see that with the way that they portray Mattel's higher-ups. They're portrayed as harmless, dumb guys that they just didn't notice what's going on. They are really trying their best. They're portrayed in a way that pokes fun at them, but in the most joking around with your boss kind of way. Where you'll make fun, but never too much, and never enough to really put them into question. Just enough to make them seem like they have a sense of humor about themselves. In Barbie, all the jokes that make fun of Mattel are extremely surface level, never making real criticism. The Boys is financed by Amazon, the biggest company. This criticism they do shouldn't be happening. And what if I told you that it isn't? There's been a definite shift in how The Boys feels. I know it's stupid, but it really is just a feeling.
PewDiePie?
This feeling of change, I think, has been misconstrued into a feeling that the show is more political now. But I don't think that's what the change really is. I think that the change is that the show changed what it uses politics for. In season 1 of The Boys, we see, for all the reasons that I've talked about, how the show attacks capitalism specifically. Although it's not the only thing it tackles, you can trace most things it criticizes back to capitalism. Now, let's take a look at one of my favorite characters from season 4, Firecracker. She's a super epic mega Chad based red pill Spartan soldier influencer, and I'm pretty sure she's named after Salty Cracker, whose thumbnails look like this.
This guy's not that guy. What's that?
He also said that January 6th was gonna be the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones. Just saying. Cracker. She's this influencer that enforces just the worst ideas. She believes all this horrible stuff that is bad for everyone, especially her, a non-penis haver. Throughout season 4, we see how she's affected by this. She wants to be more than just a sex object, but she's immersed herself in this world where she can't be. We see how horrible of a place she's stuck in, something that I would imagine happens to a lot of women in deeply conservative places. But there it is. It is a criticism of conservatism, not capitalism. Now, not everything in the show needs to be a criticism of capitalism, especially since she's a new character, not an old character that they changed. But they changed old characters too. So, Homelander is just Trump. That's like he's Trump.
I'm gonna do it.
If you don't see that, you might be stupid.
Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
Trump said that if he killed someone in Times Square, he could get away with it. You know what happens at the end of season 3? Homelander uses his love ray to wholesomate this evil guy in Times Square, and his head halves in size, just like how the Grinch's heart grows. Then everyone cheers because of how wholesome it was. Homelander takes over Vought. I mean, he's essentially CEO. Actually, he's just a figurehead now. Okay, so? Well, I mean, Trump kind of took over the Republican Party. I don't have the time or stamina to build an entire argument over why this is true, but I can cite the cult-like don't ask questions attitude that Trump supporters seem to have, or the way that the Republican Party has abandoned their supposed values for Trump's campaigns. So, I'm thinking that Vought is a stand-in for the Republican Party now, not a stand-in for companies like Disney. There are more weird little things like that that take the blame off of big companies. Like how Butcher buys Connect 4 off of specifically Amazon, and buys a 7-tower Lego set. Although these two things aren't inherently uncharacteristic of him, they do create a certain image that buying from a company you don't like actually isn't that bad. I don't think it's uncharacteristic for Butcher to buy the 7-tower Lego set. It even shows how much of a monopoly Vought has on everything. At the same time, though, if it had been in season 1, I could totally see Butcher buying an off-brand Lego set, and there being some haha, funny ha-ha-ha, joke ha, hee-hee, ha-ha-ha-ha. Ha. This shows a shift towards being less hard on big companies and capitalism in general. I mean, now they're even covering Jeffy Bezos' shiny ass. Let's take a look at Stan Edgar. In earlier seasons, he's a powerful character. He is very much responsible for what Vought has done. That he needs to be held responsible for what his company has done. Now, let's take a look at him in the newest season. He's just a victim. He didn't do anything that bad. I mean, we better protect him. I think that's the most telling change. The show is doing what a lot of things like Barbie do. Looking at the surface level problems to make you feel like you're rebelling and being radical, but at the same time it doesn't dare touch the root of the problem, even going out of its way to justify that root. The Boys shouldn't exist. It was truly radical at one point. It did do some damage. It's changed though. The Boys shows us how easily something radical can be co-opted and turned into something not. I don't know too much how to end this video. I don't know, just try to stay critical of media. Do your best to understand why a piece of media is saying something and why it feels like it changed. Thanks for watching my dumb little thingy about The Boys.